So I want to welcome everybody. Sebastian is going to do a wonderful presentation. He did one for us, was it a year ago, Sebastian?
Yep, last year.
Yeah, and it was really wonderful. And we recorded it last year and it continues to get a lot of views, and it's very popular, right, Candace? Well, she's muted. It takes a second. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's constantly getting views.
Yeah. So whenever you're ready, Sebastian, let's get started. We have a lot of staff here and some of your people. I see we also have some of our participants' families here as well. So welcome everybody. And Sebastian, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you guys for having me and to hear me speak today. My name is Sebastian, and I'm an autistic self-advocate. This is my second time speaking here, and a lot has changed since I spoke last year. Since then, I accomplished my dream of getting a full-time journalism job. I've been a caregiver for autistic people in group homes. I started a YouTube channel. I became a social skills coach for autistic young adults, got myself pet rats, and I found love. Let me give you a little background about myself. So I was diagnosed with Asperger's at 10 years old. However, I reject that term because the doctor, Hans Asperger, was found to be complicit with the Nazis during World War II, going as far as to send high support needs children to die while trying to protect lower support needs people like myself. That represents everything I stand against, as my goal in life is to unify and protect autistic people regardless of how their traits manifest. That is why I identify as autistic. When you see me, you may not realize I'm autistic at first glance, but if you saw me as a child, your thoughts would probably change. I can hold a conversation and make friends until I was 10. I spoke only in echolalia, repeating lines from cartoons and movies to communicate until I was 8. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I stopped speaking in a monotone. My earliest meltdown I can remember is when my grandparents took me to a Walmart that was different from the one we usually went to, and we had to leave the store. I was sent to a segregated school because of aggression, although it was mainly verbal aggression, not physical. I think part of it came from my dad and I moving in with my stepmom, who was very domineering and controlling over me, and I didn't know how else to communicate my frustration. She has shaped many of the insecurities I developed growing up, but I'll talk about that in greater detail later. I started middle school in regular classes with an inclusion teacher, then declassified out of special ed entirely upon entering high school. I then went to college to study journalism. Like most autistic people I know, bullying was a huge problem for me growing up, but the worst of it was probably in college. Now, I could tell you straight up that college is not designed with autistic people in mind. There was a disability resource center, but at that time, my parents conditioned me not to be open about being autistic. They preferred to just pretend that it didn't exist. As a result, I would mask, which means to hide your autistic nature and pretend to be neurotypical. That backfired on me, however, as I would pretend to be someone I wasn't. Because of my insecurities, I would pretend to be this tough figure, and it ended up scaring people away. The thing with me is that you have to be direct in order for me to understand what you're thinking or what you want. I can feel empathy at a very heightened level, but I won't know what it is that's bothering you unless you tell me. Also, I could be completely unaware of the things I say in the moment, as many people would stop talking to me without explaining why, causing further frustration. I could tell you from experience that the worst kind of bullying when you're autistic is the subtle kind. When I'd be physically bullied, I would at least know exactly what that person was trying to do and why. But when people give you the silent treatment, it could feel like you're trapped in a maze. I kept asking myself, why are they doing this to me? It made me feel like I was losing my mind. In the first semester, I had 2 roommates who lived with me in the dorm, but during the second semester, they moved away. They lied and said that it was because the room was too small for 3 people, which was partially true since the room was designed for 2 people. However, in the second semester, I would constantly call them to hang out, but rarely got a response. I kept making excuses to myself like they were busy. But really, they just didn't want to be around me, but also didn't want to hurt my feelings. Now, let me tell you, that's the worst thing you can do to an autistic person. We need the truth. We need directness, even if it hurts. I personally prefer hard truths over comfortable lies. Anyway, I forced them to talk at the end of the year, and they told me the truth, that they were afraid of me and didn't want to hurt my feelings. I was devastated. I think that was my first time going into a complete shutdown where I lost motor function and could barely move. It felt like my body became filled with bricks. Up to that point, I imagined getting an RV and traveling across the country with them because they gave me the impression that they were my friends. It sent me into depression for years. But that moment was pivotal for me as it got me to realize how harsh the outside world could be, especially toward autistic people. In the following years, I dated a girl who was also autistic for 3 years. However, she had high support needs than I did, and the only autistic people I met up to that point were people more like me. This girl needed help with a lot of things that came naturally to me, and eventually I left because I didn't know how to help her when I had trouble taking care of myself. Also, our personalities were so different that it seemed we just lost that spark. I preferred someone who would motivate me to be better, to better myself and to evolve, not someone who just wants everything to stay the same. After leaving her, I had an argument with my stepmother, which pretty much changed my life from that point forward. One day, she told me that I shouldn't disclose that I'm autistic at work, saying that it's something medical like cancer. So I asked her, why do you compare it to cancer? And she said that autism is a terrible disease and needs to be cured. And so I said, that is the most evil thing you have ever said. And she told me about her cousin who was autistic and was in diapers as a teenager. She said she was suffering because of it. I said, the only suffering we face is people like you who can't accept us for who we are. It kept going back and forth from there, but that argument ended my relationship with her. At work, when my boss would leave, I would use my computer to research autism because I had no idea that autistic people like my stepmother described existed. My parents kept me sheltered from them. From what I found in my research, my point still stands. Autistic people, regardless of how their traits manifest, deserve to be respected, loved, and accommodated like everybody else. They are not broken, and they're perfect the way they are. To quote neurodiversity pioneer Jim Sinclair, autism is a way of being. It is not possible to separate the person from the autism. Therefore, when parents say, I wish my child did not have autism, what they're really saying is, I wish the autistic child I have did not exist and I had a different or non-autistic child instead. I agree with Jim, as autism is an integral part of how I think and perceive the world. If my autism was taken from me, I would no longer be Sebastian. I'd be a different person with a different personality, experiences, and memories. To be honest, I imagine I'd be quite boring. That is why I was hurt when my stepmother told me I should be cured, because to me, it was her way of saying, I cannot accept you unless you fit into what I consider normal. Her actions toward me growing up certainly reflected that philosophy. With the research I was doing, I eventually discovered the neurodiversity movement. Neurodiversity means that people with different brains, such as autism, Down syndrome, ADHD, Tourette's, and schizophrenia, are people of equal value and deserving of the same rights as everyone else, rather than diseases to be eradicated. It was when I finally discovered that there was a whole community of people like me who were trying to make the world a better place for autistic people by making our voices heard instead of being kept in silence. The friends I made along the way got me to realize that I wasn't a broken neurotypical, but rather a complete autistic person. I discovered the way autistic people have been abused by society. I and everyone else I know in my community are working hard to bring that abuse to an end. We do this because we want to create a world for your children where they do not have to hide who they are, where they can stim and flap their hands freely, where they do not have to fear being abused or persecuted for the way they were born. That's because growing up, we didn't get to have that. But if we can make that happen for future generations, there is no greater accomplishment than that. I dream of a day where autistic people and their families can go out in public without the autistic person afraid of being judged or persecuted, where they can flap, jump, or make noises freely without anybody stopping them, or they can talk at length about their special interests without being bullied for it. where they can have hard days and still be treated with compassion and love, and not as monsters like the media likes to portray. Whether such a thing would happen in my lifetime, I have no idea. But the more people who think such a thing is possible, the easier it would be to achieve. We can't achieve that alone, though. That is why we need to unite with parents, because in order to help your children, we need you guys. I can't speak for all autistic people, but I and everyone else I know can offer a lot because of lived experience. We know firsthand what it's like to grow up autistic, and we want to make the world easier for them to navigate. I include autistic-led resources in the advertisements and social media posts for you to follow. The reason not many people hear about us is because the media tends to ignore disabled people themselves. And if they don't, it's often portrayed in a negative light. I would like to say a few things that I wish my parents could have done, which would have made my life growing up a little easier, that I hope can help you. I'm not saying anyone hasn't done these things already, but they're just things I personally would have benefited from as a child. Firstly, I can't stress this one enough. Encourage your child to follow their special interests and turn it into a passion. If they love trains, encourage them to become an expert on them and work on trains as an adult. If they love art, turn it into a daily activity and encourage them to show their work at exhibitions and sell them. Whatever it is they enjoy doing, zero in on that and get them to turn it into something that they can devote their life to. And next, do not compare them to others. I faced this throughout my life, and it created a lot of self-esteem issues and insecurities I still work on to this day. Growing up, my parents would always tell me, why can't you be like Jeff? He's so successful. Or why can't you do what your cousin does? She makes a ton of money. That kind of stuff didn't motivate me. It would just make me angry and feel lower because I didn't live up to their expectations. I personally believe it's more beneficial to look at what your child wants and help them work towards that goal rather than have them live up to the expectations you set out for them. My parents would also get disappointed in me because I pursued journalism rather than IT computer work, despite the fact that I barely know anything about the basics of computers besides simple Google and Microsoft apps, nor do I really care about it. Not too long ago, my father told me that my stepmom was disappointed that I didn't go as far as she wanted me to go in life. And I just said, honestly, I really don't care if she's disappointed. I wasn't born on this earth to please her. I was born to follow my own dreams, and I did just that. Whether she's disappointed or not means nothing to me. I'm living the life that I want to live, and that's what matters to me most. Long story short, based on my experiences, I would imagine your child would be happy if they lived the life they personally want to live as they grow up, as long as they're safe, of course. This may seem difficult, but try to teach them cues that they may have trouble understanding. My father didn't know how to teach me to understand people and make friends, which was a huge disservice. Teach them nonverbal cues, how to understand sarcasm when someone shows a lack of interest, how to keep a conversation going. That is, if they could speak. If they can't speak, I would get them access to an AAC device as early as possible. Speech and occupational therapists are experts on that. For the past year as a side job, I've actually been teaching social skills to autistic young adults, and I even learned some of the material for the first time through what I was taught. It's called IRL social skills. It's something I really wish existed when I was a kid. Next, do not make them feel ashamed for being themselves. If they flap their hands, make noises, watch wheels spin, rock back and forth, those are all natural. It's called stimming, which is how we regulate our bodies. For me personally, when I'm happy, I'll flap my hands and make noises, sometimes slapping my chest or jumping because the excitement just rushes through my body. If I'm upset, I may smack myself in the head and have to remove myself from wherever I am. If your child does that, punishing them would only upset them more. Instead, keep yourself calm and grounded and let them communicate their needs in whatever way works best for them, whether it's on their iPad, through a drawing, or pointing at things. Autistic people are always communicating, even if it isn't through words. Make them feel like they're being listened to. Oftentimes, I acted out because I felt ignored or like I wasn't being listened to. And as I've said earlier, be direct. Don't beat around the bush. Say what you mean and be consistent with your words. I and a lot of other autistic people I know are great at spotting patterns. When you do something that deviates from your overall pattern of what you say and do, it can be distressing. It can make us lose trust in the person. If you have trouble being consistent, writing everything down can be helpful. Also, being direct, I'm a type of person who needs to be told that the person loves me in order to believe it. If they're upset, try to show as much compassion as possible, even during frustrating moments. When I've been upset and cried, my parents would shame me for crying, which just made it worse. If they had given me hugs and assured me that everything would be okay and that there's nothing wrong with crying, would have made me feel a lot better. Now, be very mindful of schools. Teachers can be incredibly discriminatory depending on where it is. And if your child comes home upset, then it's probably what happened in school. Sounds pretty obvious, but I can't tell you how many times that I've come home distressed from school and my parents would be oblivious to it. I just wanted them to pay attention to it and ask me what was wrong because I didn't know how else to communicate it. And if I did tell them, I was ignored. Ask your child ask your child how school was and get them to be open by reassuring them that you're there for them and will do everything to make them feel better. Next, make things predictable for them. If plans change, let them know well in advance. Even as an adult, if plans change, that can certainly affect how the rest of my day goes. Sometimes a visual schedule can help them to know what's coming next throughout the day. Next, if they have trouble making friends, I suggest having play dates or get-togethers with other autistic or neurodivergent children. Neurodivergent means anyone who has the conditions that fall under neurodiversity, the ones that I listed earlier. Odds are a neurodivergent person would understand your child way better than a neurotypical one. Of course, I'm not suggesting you keep your children away from neurotypical ones, but if they have trouble getting along, neurodivergent children are always there for potential new friends. If your child melts down or gets stressed, I suggest giving them their favorite sim toys or anything that makes them feel comfortable. For example, my friend who has a son that is non-speaking with high support needs has outfitted his room with bubble lamps that are visually stimulating for him to look at, which calms him down. He also has a lot of weighted stuffed animals and weighted blankets, as pressure makes him feel comfortable and regulated. If it's possible, let the children take the lead sometimes. By that, I mean if they want to go for a walk, follow their lead and walk with them. If they want to dress a certain way, as long as it's appropriate, let them express themselves. As Dr. Barry Prezant, a speech and language pathologist that I know, would suggest, instead of imposing external control, it is essential to offer the child choices to give them a voice in planning schedules, activities, and significant aspects of their lives. Having some degree of control over our lives and bodies makes us feel at ease. For me, there's nothing worse than parents deciding the type of car you'll have, the subjects you take in school, and where to celebrate your graduation. My parents controlled all of those things. It made me very dependent on them as an adult. If you want your children to develop independence in adulthood, giving them a sense of choice will make that a lot easier. I and many other autistics I know can relate to this one, and that is that we're very eager to please the people we love. So if you yell at your children, it may make them feel scared or guilty because we internalize everything, and I mean everything. We have a wonderful memory and can remember any kind of bad moment or abuse we've endured. Be careful on how you interact with your children under stress because we can feel your energy tenfold, even if we don't know how to show or verbalize it. Most of the autistic people I know have hyperempathy, meaning we can feel their energy deeply. What is traumatic for autistic people may not be traumatic for the neurotypical person because of our hypersensitive systems. When you yell often or throw things or whatever, that'll create a lot of fear because of how we internalize things. I grew up very afraid of my parents and I don't talk to them that often because of it. I took my partner on vacation recently to see my parents and I was incredibly scared for months leading up to it, to the point where I had trouble doing daily tasks because the anxiety was that overwhelming. All in all, try to have as deep of a bond with your children as possible, even if you're not the lovey-dovey type. It'll make all the difference because when an autistic person loves someone, you'll know, and everyone will benefit in the end because of it. Will there be hard days? Of course. But if you can show composure and love no matter how hard it gets, it'll save a lot of internalized trauma down the line. I hope all that helped. If you guys have questions, I'd love to answer them. Even if I can't answer a specific question, I do know many advocates with many more years of experience than myself who I could refer you to. Anybody have any questions?
Sebastian, I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and that is that I'm feeling extremely thankful for your incredible ability to verbalize this and help me be a better understander and human being, really. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. I had written all this down beforehand, otherwise I don't think I'd be able to speak to the level that I was. But yes, thank you.
Phenomenal speaker, phenomenal.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So Sebastian, this is Mara, and and that was an excellent talk. Thank you so much. And we just love you because you totally rock. And I'm curious, like, what do you say, like, in the world of like autistic self-advocacy? Like, there's a lot of pushback around like teaching social skills to autistic people, and they're like, don't do that. And I think it's really confusing for parents, to hear like, oh wait, well, what do we oh, that's bad, what are we supposed to do? So can you speak to
Yeah,
that?
of course. Well, like the work we do, it's good to be able to teach autistic people certain skills just to have in their back pocket when they're encountering, especially neurotypicals, because it's not so much to mask who you are. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be to be able to just navigate the world more easily. And that's why I do what I do. And that we're very mindful about, their mental state and how comfortable they feel. And we're always receptive to feedback. And I think that needs to be the goal of any kind of social skills teaching.
Nice, thank you so much.
Hi, Sebastian. It's Jeff.
Hey, what's up, Jeff?
Thank you. I'm glad that you had some prompts, because I could have delivered that kind of speech myself. I was like, wow, I am like way behind on this. But since the last time we met you, we have brought in a couple of schools where focus on kids on the spectrum. And it was amazing. Like, it's amazing right now what we're learning, right? By just doing the programs that we're doing. And at first there was a lot of like, oh, is this supposed to be like this? Or is it supposed to be like that? Is it making any progress? And it was really hard for us to understand what was happening. And we got to a point where we started asking, and, and some of the kids and some of the staff that came to visit us told us, be patient and give them the opportunity to discover for themselves, what would work and what didn't work. And it's been a great experience. Like today, I was with one of the groups, and one of the kids just would run away from the horses, was like totally leading the horses very quietly in his own way. And, so I love your perspective of self-actualization, giving people the chance, just like neurotypicals talk about, they want to be themselves and authentic. So thank you. And do you have any suggestions of working with the horses or working with these new groups? Like any things that you think might work well with them, like parent groups, or we'd love to hear it.
Of course. Yeah, that's a good question. So I personally don't have that much experience with horses, so I wouldn't be able to speak on that part specifically. But I think, as you were saying, that kid who was able to, lead the horses in his own way, I think, as I said before in one of the other points, is to not impose your will on them, but rather try to let them take the lead or have as much choice as possible. And as you said, find out, what approach works best with them, see what they respond to best, and try to just keep going and pursue that, I think is really what I would do in that situation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. See, Sarah has her hand raised.
Hey, Sebastian.
What's up, Sarah?
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk that you had some things that changed over the year, and one of them was finding love. And as somebody, I'm also autistic, and I just celebrated 20 years of marriage with my husband.
Oh, congratulations.
Yay! And I don't know about you, but I get a lot of questions about love and relationships and things like that. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience, and also just any thoughts you have for encouraging romantic relationships?
Yes, of course. I'm glad you asked because we're actually very close. My partner and I, we met last year getting ice cream, and it went very well. She's autistic as well and has everything in common with me. We're both queer and pansexual. We both love horror movies. We both love hippie stuff. We both love animals. We both love video games. So we have a lot to bond over. And like what I was able to do with her that I just didn't have in any of my other relationships is we're able to resolve things very easily. We're able to come to compromises very easily. And I think that's a skill that tends to get very taken for granted in relationships, whether that be neurodivergent or neurotypical relationships. And that's something I think I'm pretty proud of. And it's made me, very confident because my goal is to make sure that her needs are met and that both of our needs are met mutually. I think that's something for any autistic person trying to find love is to be able to do those things and be able to communicate as effectively as possible. And sorry, had to breathe. And yeah, I think that's ultimately what you need to do.
Thank you, friend.
Of course, thank you.
I don't know, how do you raise your hands? How did you get, where's that icon?
So you go to where it says reactions down on the bottom
okay.
thing, and then it gives you the option to raise your hand.
Okay. Okay, well, pretend I'm raising my hand because I was Sebastian, last year you said a couple things that really stuck with me and changed me and how I work with the students. And I'd like you to just talk about both of them a little bit for anybody who wasn't on with you last year for your presentation.
Mhm.
One of them was about this parents really insisting on eye contact. And it always felt so uncomfortable for me. Like a child would say goodbye, but they kind of make a big point of saying, no, look at Liz. And it always broke my heart. And you talked a lot about that. And also this idea when we have a participant who's stimming, just, wanting to say quiet hands or keeping those movements still. So can you talk about that for everybody? Because that was really powerful, impactful for me.
Yeah, so I do remember that question from last year. I think that eye contact is a very arbitrary thing and really isn't necessary to communication, in my opinion, because there are other ways of acknowledging that you're listening to a person, such as repeating back what they say or looking in their general direction and not their eyes, or you nod your head and listen. All those things are ways to validate what the person's saying. And eye contact could just feel like a burning feeling for me. I hate eye contact. It makes me feel very intimidated and uncomfortable. And there are even entire cultures, such as certain cultures in Africa, that don't make eye contact because it's perceived as rude. So it's really just more of an American European thing to force eye contact. And I think it's kind of pointless. Also, with like you were saying, quiet hands, it was I don't like that either because stimming is what we need to regulate ourselves. Like right now, I'm using kinetic sand to make myself, to calm me down. And it's just something natural for us, something we need. Even neurotypical stim sometimes, like when they click their pen or tap their fingers on their desk or whatever. The only difference is autistic people are a little more overt about it, and they actually need it to keep themselves regulated. And also, I think part of why people force those rules is just to create a semblance of normality. But question is, what even is normal? Who decides what is normal? Like, if you go back in history, can you even trace who created the concept of normal? So I think there really is no such thing, and people just need to be able to do what is best for them. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Sebastian. That was really well said. What about, I do have a student who becomes self-injurious but he bites himself, or a student that might hit themselves in the head. Is that always when somebody feels upset? Sometimes it's hard to tell. Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. That could definitely happen. Even with me, I could sometimes bite or hit myself. Really, it just comes down to just being so stressed and overwhelmed that your body just cannot handle what's going on. And the only way to make it stop is that, because it's just so overwhelming. Honestly, what I would do is just try to do whatever you can to avoid those triggers. Sometimes it can be hard to find. Sometimes it takes investigating. You got to be a detective some of the time, and to just read the room, see the environment, see what they're playing with, see what if this kind of thing happened before, like see what happens every time it happens, like what led up to it. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Kristen, your hand is up.
Yeah. Hi, Sebastian. So I was wondering how I should support a young adult around 27 years old who is very unhappy with the fact that he's autistic, because he is lonely and he has some life skills issues, with taking care of himself. So he sees it all as a great big deficit. So yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I used to feel that way myself. Honestly, what broke me out of that was just having other autistic friends to talk to and express my grievances to and express my feelings with. As you saw, a bunch of my other friends showed up, and just having that group, having that tribe just really helps you embrace who you are. So for your son, in his instance, what I would say is to like try to connect him with other autistic friends, and also to just keep giving him reassurance that it is okay. It's okay to struggle, because we all do. And you're still worthy of love and acceptance despite that, or more so because of it, not in spite. But you get what I mean. Julia or Julio, I see your hand.
Hi, Sebastian. Thank you. Wow, it's listening to you talk. It's like you touched on so many elements of our experience. But it sounds like we're doing pretty much the right thing, but we clearly are making some mistakes in listening to you. But my question is with regards to friends. Our son's 10, and he desperately wants to make friendships. And where do we find these? Are there good resources to find neurodiverse children that he can interact with and build relationships with?
Good question. It honestly is really a roll of the dice. One resource I know of is Meetup, the app. And you could look up like autism groups or even autism parent groups. Like you could connect with other parents, and through those parents, your child could connect to those children. Also look up any type of autism events coming up. I personally don't attend stuff like walks or like Autism Society of America stuff, but those are also places where your child can meet other autistic kids that they could interact with. So I hope those help and give you some ideas.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else?
Well, kind of just speaking to what Julia or Jeff just said, or Julio or Julio, sorry. In terms of like finding friends, other autistic friends for your son, try to find groups that meet based on what your son is passionate about, be it Minecraft or Legos or, animals, whatever he's interested in. There are other people who are interested in that too.
Good point, Mara. I was thinking of specifically neurodivergent children, but yes, I agree. Those are very good ideas as well.
Yeah. And I mean, and they might also be neurodivergent.
Liz, I see your hand.
Thank you, Sebastian. I have a question. You were talking about when you were echolaic or scripting. Is scripting like a self? It's funny, I've seen scripting sometimes have a sense of being a tone of self-soothing, but I've also seen scripting sound very anxiety riddled, like very, like a distraught sound or sense of that child is distraught. Are both true or?
Yeah, both are absolutely true in a good sense, like in a soothing sense. They'll repeat lines that feel good with their throat, the vibrations on their throat, and it feels really good. Or just that line itself just really stuck out to them and they just love how it sounds on that side. And then on the other side, when they're distressed, they'll usually repeat lines that they heard during very distressing times. Say if a parent abuses the child and says a specific line, when a child is just, when that person grows up and they're distressed, they'll often repeat that line again, signifying the feelings they associated with that situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
It's Meredith again. Do you find that as you have gotten older, that things like schedule changes, unexpected events bother you less? Do you feel like you've just learned how to cope better with them? Or do you feel like you're still very much needing a schedule?
Yeah, it really depends on the situation, honestly. Like when I went to visit my family, my partner and I were supposed to meet up with my friend from high school, and like plans had changed and I was like on the verge of having a meltdown, but I was able to stop myself. So it still can be very hard dealing with schedule changes and unpredictability. But, as an adult, I just find ways to make it work. I have my stim toys. I have like different videos that calm me down. I have music I listen to that calms me down. It's just a matter of finding the right coping skills, and that could vary for everyone. I wouldn't be able to say what the next autistic person should do to soothe them. Julio, I think your hand is up again.
Yeah, we were just talking about, like, with our son, we've never even said he's autistic to him. Is that something we should be saying to him, like give him that label?
You said he was 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think it'd be best you tell him right away, because that gives him answers and helps him know who he is. And it also will help him connect with, his tribe, his neuro tribe, other people like him.
Right.
And that'll give him a sense of solidarity and help him feel like he's loved and understood and accepted. Because, at the end of the day, autistic people are a marginalized group. Having other people like you around really helps you figure out who you are and your identity and what you want to do in life. At least that's how it was for me. So yeah, I would tell him, the way I would frame it is, his son, whatever his name is, I just need to tell you this: you're autistic. That means that you see the world in a different way from other people, and you may respond to the world in a different way than others. But that does not make you any lesser than others. In fact, it makes you very unique and stand out from others in a very beautiful way. And, whatever else that's personal to him, that's up to you.
Thank you.
No problem. Rosani, I see your hand.
Hi, Sebastian. Nice to meet you. I just wanted to say that I love your answer of that question. I have a brother that he's autistic, and when my parents told him that he was autistic, it was a little hard on him. Probably we didn't express how he was in a good way, but he took it really well after. And yeah, I just wanted to say that that was a really good answer of that question. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Yeah, although I knew I was autistic at 10, my family would try to pretend that it didn't exist and would try to make me as normal as possible. And that really does a disservice, especially just trying to lie, to the kid just because of differences. Because at the end of the day, autism may be a label, but that doesn't mean it has to be a bad label. It isn't good or bad. It just is, you know?
Exactly. And also it gave him like intention in life also, like he loves animation, he loves like making videos and stuff. And it's amazing how he knows what he has, and he's like, I don't care, I can do it. And it just give him purpose in life, and it's really amazing.
That's wonderful. Yes, like the first point I brought up in that list is, of course, encourage him to follow his passions and pursue it. It took me a lot of willpower to be able to pursue my journalism job because of everybody in my family who told me that I couldn't do it. And, through just willpower, I was able to prove them wrong. So yeah, make sure he hones in on that passion, because he could do great things if he really set his mind to it.
Thank you, Sebastian.
No problem.
Can I add something just for fun?
Of course.
I have to say, first of all the questions are so great, and your perspective is amazing. We're already friends, but I've enjoyed learning so much about you. But I want to tell you, and I don't know if it would be helpful for everybody else here, because I am autistic too. One of my favorite things about being friends with you is our communication style. We have very deep conversations, but also they're asynchronous, meaning that neither one of us have like a time expectation on when you have to get back to me by or anything like that. And it really helps me personally feel comfortable to be thoughtful about my answers, or to be thoughtful about what I'm bringing to talk to my other autistic friends, not just you. But that is something, because I was late diagnosed. That has been something that claiming my autistic identity has helped, to know that my communication style is valid, and then to find friends who accept me for that has been transformative. So I don't like I was thinking about the social skills question, and I think that's one of the things personally that I wanted to bring up, was just that we autistic people sometimes have our own communication styles, and I like ours. It's cool.
Of course. Yeah, I appreciate you having you as a friend, and thank you for showing up, Sarah. I will admit, like the point you mentioned about the giving you the time to respond and stuff, that's something I used to struggle with for a very long time. And it wasn't until like in more recent that I was able to fully, process and understand that. So yeah, it took a lot of work, but I'm glad, to be able to move past that, and you get to see that side. So thank you. Jude, I see your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to say that's pretty much how, like, communicating asynchronously, like that's pretty much how I communicate with most of my friends. Um, and most of them are neurodivergent as well, where like I'll message them one day and maybe like we'll catch up at the end of the month, everything that I've been sending. And it's not, and really like what you talked about, it being necessary for like direct and honest communication, like communicating that up front, like that I don't mind if you reply to me later. I don't want to make you feel stressed, or because especially being autistic, when we don't get that direct and honest communication, or even people who aren't neurodivergent, a lot of times it's like, oh, they didn't reply to me. Do they hate me? Do they or are they upset at me? Did I do something wrong? When knowing myself, a lot of times I don't have the spoons to respond. I get distracted, have a lot going on, things like that. So just like having that direct and honest communication, that we can communicate in the way that's best for you, and communicate in a way that you respond in your own time, and not trying to adhere to a timeline that really doesn't work for either of us, so that we don't have to put that unnecessary stress and strain on a relationship when it can accommodate both of us by replying in a time frame that is more accommodating to us, rather us trying to accommodate or adhere to a very strict form of communication that doesn't work for us, and that leaves us in pain and in stress, and honestly it like kills a lot of relationships based off things unsaid or things assumed, things that could have been solved with grace and direct and honest communication.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had very good conversations as well. And yeah, I'm glad we're able to do that with each other as well. I will also say that the reason I would get impatient during times like that was because, for the same reasons you're talking about, like, do they hate me? Are they mad at me? Because, I also need very direct communication. So it took me a long time to be able to just stand back and be like, if they respond, they respond. If they don't, move on. It's definitely a skill. And I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Jude. Anyone else have any questions?
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I should have asked you around an hour ago. So I keep showing my face when I ask you a question, thinking that that is the polite thing to do. Would you prefer that that you did not see me, or are you indifferent?
Honestly, I could care less, especially with Zoom, because a lot of people could be, self-conscious about the rooms or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't care.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just want to say, Sebastian, that was very intuitive, because I put my camera on for like a minute and then I realized that all the laundry on my bed is showing. So I turned the camera off.
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
clean my room before turning the camera on, but yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good for me.
But yeah, did you guys have any questions like regarding what happened over the course of the year? Because I've been working with high support needs autistic people in group homes, and that was very enlightening. Liz, I see your hand.
I'm so obnoxious. I have so many questions. I find that like there are so many of the students that I have with autism, they're so, I think, and it's interesting to ask you this. There's this thing about routine and structure, but I feel like it's constant from one thing to another thing to another thing. And it seems exhausting to me. Like if I were them, like I have a student that goes from some event and something in the morning, then comes to riding, then goes immediately to swimming. Do you think that's overdone, or do you think that that's helpful? Like,
Well, as long as the autistic person themselves has control over that routine, then I think it would be a lot less stressful, or at least it is for me. Sometimes even by myself, I could have trouble forming a schedule on my own. So my partner can, sometimes help me with that, and that also helps. But being able to have control, as much control as possible, that is very good. And as long as, nothing gets in our way, or at least things are made predictable, if there are changes, no, it's really not that stressful. Routines keep us regulated. They make us feel good, because predictability keeps us very calm.
okay,
You know what
all
I
right,
mean?
thank you.
Yep. Jude, your hand.
I wanted to sort of comment on that too, because I actually I'm autistic, and both of my children are autistic, and so I took my child out of public school due to a number of things, like due to their slow processor, and they're a slow eater. Like they need about an hour to eat most things, and their school was only giving them about 15 minutes. So literally they were like starving during the day. So it was like literally, in a lot of the accommodation that they would get during school was honestly like punishment. Like, yes, they'd get extra time for schoolwork, but it would be during time like when they're going outside to play. So it felt more like a punishment than an accommodation. And so I tried to, with homeschooling, it's more of trying to do education in a way that accommodates their need, what they want and how they function, rather than trying to make them adhere to a very strict schedule for me. And not to say that doesn't include regimen, but that was more of a journey for me to like discover that regimen doesn't always mean like action packed, like very full, like understanding that I didn't have to follow the school schedule just as it was, because we're homeschooling. And part of understanding that my child is a slow processor, that they need more time in that regimen. So what we've been doing lately is, like, for homeschooling, we'll do about 3 subjects per like 8 weeks, and then move on to 3 more subjects per 8 weeks. And like there's still regimen in there, but not like a heavy load, and talking to my child throughout the entire process. So when it's like, well, I'm really stressed about this, I don't look forward to this. And it's like, well, what do you think would help change this? Or at least what about it don't you like, so that I can be more accommodating in creating that regimen that focus on their wants and their needs, rather than creating a regimen just trying to keep them per se focused. So yeah, I'd say a lot of it has to do with like making sure that they have control over it, and make sure that they have say, and make sure that that regimen, that structure, because I thrive in regimen and structure as well, but it has to be like regimen and structure that's made for me, not regimen or structure that I'm trying to adhere to a schedule that's killing me. So, and I do understand a lot of people, like a lot of children who are in public school in certain situations, that it can only accommodate them so much because of the powers that be, because of the authoritarianism there. But when the opportunity is given, like, make sure that, like, yeah, pretty much that structure and regimen, that you're able to give that input, that you're giving them space for that change. It's like, yeah, I'm doing good at this, but it's actually like hurting me. I feel like I don't have enough time for this. So is there a way that we can change this so that like I'm still able, it still has that structure, but that structure is for me, not for somebody else to put on me because it's more convenient for them.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing that you have that kind of insight. I mean, that's great.
You're welcome. And it's like it's an everyday journey too, because a lot of what I do with homeschooling and what I do is honestly me discovering things about myself as well. So it's like and really understanding, it's like, if I wouldn't like this, and if this hurt me in school, having to adhere it and trying to keep up with it, why am I doing that to my child, sort of thing? Like, if I was the things that made me upset and not look forward to school, that were traumatizing for me, but being told like, we have to do it this way. And it's like, why do I impose that on my child? In what ways are they still, and are those things still instilled in me? And how can I deconstruct that? And how can I open up that communication with my child? Because I do understand it's hard too. And it's like, well, I'm the teacher. What am I doing it so that they're not properly getting education, that they're not properly learning? But like, literally, like Sebastian, when you said like adhere to their interests, like they're my oldest child, they're very stressed when it comes to reading and writing. And so I also wanted to teach them about like civil rights. And so I taught them about Ella Baker and how she would ask her, the people that she would organize with, it's like, what do you hope to accomplish? And so I talked to Teddy, it's like, well, let's write a paper about what do you hope to accomplish in life? Of course, they want to be a video game creator. They love video games. They love Sonic. So more of focusing on what they want to do in their life and what they love to hyper focus on, what they love to info dump on, and adhering it to like helping them write, and then doing it at a speed where we even did it at like 1 or 2 paragraphs a day sometimes, but breaking it down to their interests really brought back, so that there was a lot of progress, a lot less stress, and just focusing more on my child rather than trying to focus on having them adhere to a certain way of learning. It's really done a lot for both of us.
That's wonderful, Jude. I'm very happy you're able to do that for them. I really think that teachers everywhere need to hear your perspective, because that was really good.
And not just for children with autism, for anybody. I mean, it would be a wonderful way to learn.
Definitely. The way schools are structured really just don't seem to be compatible with really anybody, neurotypical or neurodivergent, because of just how authoritarian it is and colonial it is in structure, expecting everybody to be compliant worker bees instead of just honing in on their specific skills and what they excel at. Because yeah, I personally think that should be the focus. I was lucky in that I had pretty decent teachers, but not everybody gets to have that privilege. And yeah, there needs to be a complete systemic overhaul, in my opinion.
That looks like a bicycle.
So does anybody else have any questions before we let Sebastian go? And we'll definitely do this again. Sebastian, I'm speaking for you, but you have to. This has been so incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, I'm open to any other questions you guys have. And I love to be able to help.
Sebastian, where do you live?
I live in the Pacific Northwest. Last time we talked, I had just moved there like the month before. So right now I'm living in my own apartment. The last time you saw me, I was living with my friend and her kids, but I got my own apartment since then, not too far away. And yeah, it's really good.
Congratulations, Sebastian. One of the things we're trying to do now is look at developing a pre-vocational program because we have some young people. Since we met with you, we actually hired a young person that was one in our program, and he was on the spectrum. He's absolutely fantastic employee. And we're like, we should do more of this and develop some more young people that could work with us and work with other barns. There's a lot of need there. So I'm looking for somebody like you that could participate in helping us develop this program.
Yeah, you could definitely send material my way. I do work like 2 jobs right now, so I can be a little bit consumed with time. But if I do have the time, I definitely would love to contribute. Of course, can't do it in person since you guys are on the other side of the country, but I definitely would love to lend a hand however I can. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Sebastian.
No problem.
And congratulations on getting your own pad.
Thank you. It's not easy, I will admit, like, especially when you have to do all the chores by yourself and you come home from work exhausted, but you know, I try my best to make it work.
I just got my apartment last month. I know what it feels like.
Oh yeah, good job. My
Laundry.
yeah, my partner is supposed to move in with me very soon, hopefully. So yeah, that'll, we'll be able to be together more and it'll be very nice.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, so Candace, this is going to be recorded. And we'll have the recording on our website. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll be on the website and it'll be on YouTube.
Fantastic, because we're going to do a lot of reruns of this, Sebastian. So thank you so much. And anybody that wants to spread the word, just link the website and to Sebastian.
Yeah, guys, reach out. I think we have his website available as well, the link for that. And I really recommend that you go check out his stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Yes, I run 2 pages, Neurodiversity News and the Neurodivergent Liberation Coalition. Since I've been extremely busy with work and stuff, I haven't been able to contribute as much to those pages as I used to, but there is a lot of old material that I did in the past that's there that I think could be be of value to a lot of people.
Yeah, you had a speech about ABA that I thought was actually pretty amazing and quite a different perspective that I would recommend people listen to.
Thank you. Yes, that's on
Yeah.
the Neurodiversity News YouTube channel. If
Yeah.
you just search Neurodiversity News, you will see a red background with a newspaper and rainbow infinity symbol. And yeah, it's more of a quality over quantity type of channel. I don't have many videos, but the few that I have took a lot of extensive research.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Well, anything else, Candace, before we shut out? Any formality?
No formality. You can feel free to end it however you
All
like.
right. So thank you, everybody, for coming on, and thank you, Sebastian. And I bet we're all clapping for you. If you were here, you would hear it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you so much. Take care.
Thank you.